Ladies and gentlemen, in just a moment you are going to hear the voice of a man who will tell you some tremendously important facts.
Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm so super stoked and excited to get a chance to meet Ra of Earth. And if you have not heard of Ra of Earth, then you're in for such a surprise. Ra of Earth is one of the most unique spiritual teachers. You can find him on Instagram at Ra of Earth. He's posting videos all the times. He's got a YouTube channel, and he's one of the most unique individuals you'll find on the internet. I've learned so much from him in breathing techniques and exercises. He's sort of found a way to meld CrossFit into the spiritual space, where instead of doing a workout of the day, you do a Kriya of the day. And some of these are just amazing. I've learned so much. So many of his techniques have totally changed my life. And of course, his name is Ra. If anybody watches the Reality Revolution, we got to talk about that too. And so we got Ra of Earth on the Reality Revolution. Welcome to the Reality Revolution, Ra.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Brian. I'm super excited to be here. I just read your book last week, and mine, I love that resource library that you have available for people. So if you guys haven't read that book, I just read it. I'm a seeker of truth, and a lot of the references that you refer to in the book, I've delved down those rabbit holes, and you made it so digestible for people. So I'm super honored to be here speaking with you.
Oh man, that means so much to hear that from one of my heroes. So the thing that really is so much different, there's so many different spiritual teachers. People are exploring consciousness. You're just willing, you're like nobody can label you, right? Because you talk about so many things. Some of your best material are these 30-minute story videos that just disappear after a day. Like some of it are so these golden nuggets. You can tell they're coming from the heart. You might be driving or something, but it's like you're a consciousness astronaut, kind of. You want to push that border. You're experimenting with energy all the time. And so somebody that's gone through the process of understanding the body and then understanding energy, both, it's a huge revelation, such a resource. So talk to me about it. Start from that. Tell everybody who may not have heard your story, what you used to do as a CrossFit gym owner and how you moved into the space that you're in now.
Okay. So I was born like most other humans, and I started growing up, and I started noticing that I could shift reality. And as a kid, I didn't really notice it in the ways that we might as an adult. For me, it ended up being like if I knocked over some garbage cans on my bicycle, I ended up falling on my face 1 second later. Or if I was breaking mailboxes with hockey sticks, I end up smashing the window of my truck at the same time. And I started noticing whenever I do anything that I thought was wrong, usually something bad or wrong would happen to me. And so that really is different than what you're taught in school. Right. And I started noticing that as a middle school, elementary school. And so I became very, very honest, and I started following the rules. And I just grew up always following the rules because I just felt like, not that there was somebody watching me, but almost like there was just something I couldn't explain to myself. Right. And I wanted to know more about that. So I went to college and I studied psychology, thinking that's where all the answers would come from. And of course, I was disappointed. Shouldn't really say of course, but I'll just say my experience of college was that I was disappointed because what I was attached to finding out really wasn't there. And so I didn't spend any more money buying books after my first semester. And I just poured it all into buying courses or pirating courses off the internet and finding other material. And I eventually got into meditation about 19 years ago. So 19 years ago, I started getting into meditation. And as a 19-year-old, what you become interested in is girls. And I started learning how to pop up in people's dreams and seduce them. That was actually my first meditation technique, was how to pop up in somebody's dreams and seduce them so that they'll approach you in real life. And I found that to actually work. And so that was crazy. And at the same time, I had a hockey career, and I was going to school for exercise science as well. So psychology, exercise science, playing hockey. So it was like a very physical athlete, but also super interested in seemingly like there was hints that we could shape shift reality in a way. And I wasn't sure how. But at the end of the day, I graduated college and I moved to California and I opened a gym. And that experience happened because I started learning that we can create and manifest realities. And so I just decided, well, what is my greatest level of life right now? What's the greatest thing that I can imagine? And for me, it was move to California, because I lived in Michigan and no one really cared about exercise. Move to California and have a gym with ropes hanging from the ceilings and tractor tires that people can flip. And this was before anybody knew of these kinds of gyms. I just had this vision. Moved to California, created this gym within a couple years, eventually ended up turning into a CrossFit gym. And I started getting deeper and deeper into these sciences or philosophies, whatever you want to call them. That was kind of like in my background studies. That's the benefit of owning a business, is that you have time to study and research.
Mm-hmm.
And so I ended up being really injured from my hockey career. And CrossFit, my gyms eventually ended up becoming CrossFit gyms. And CrossFit's a sport where you have to be very, very, there's some CrossFit documentaries on iTunes and Netflix and stuff. You guys could look those up, but it's a very, very competitive sport where you basically have to be good at everything possible that you could physically imagine. And we would show up to competitions and have to compete. Well, me and all my injuries, I didn't really want to compete. I wouldn't train. I just was a gym owner and I wouldn't train because I've got 6 tears. I got 3 tears in each shoulder in my labrums. I've got so many malfunctions from a lifetime of hockey since I was 3 years old.
Growing up in Michigan playing hockey.
Yeah. And I was a fighter. So I was the guy that sacrificed my body to hurt the other team. And so I wouldn't work out. And I started showing up at these CrossFit competitions and winning them after not touching a barbell for an entire year. And I'm not exaggerating. Like I wouldn't even think I was going to place, and I would win. And so as a gym owner, that didn't make sense to me, because I was like, how is it? I would be hired by other gym owners to train them. Beasts, because they knew my knowledge and I wasn't working out. So I'll just pour my 3 hours a day coaching somebody else. And then competition season would come around and I would beat them. And it wouldn't make sense, because I was attached to the fact that training and exercise equals physical performance. And I really had to find out how this was possible. And so what I found is that we can charge our body and shape shift reality. I'll just use that term again. We can mold reality around our intentions. I started noticing that no matter what diet I recommended to my clients, that it would perform well, whether they're a vegan, vegetarian, paleo, keto. If somebody is intending on sacrificing and getting fully into a diet and spending all their resources on it, they're going to get the body that they desire, no matter how they eat. And that doesn't make sense to me as a gym owner, right? Where everything's about diet and exercise. Doesn't make sense that I don't work out and win competitions. And so I found personally that it was my intention. When the competition season came around, I was just really good at thinking I'm going to be on top of the podium because my business depends on me being successful in these competitions. And the fact that I was connected to the elements, primarily sun, earth, air, water, and the ether, the consciousness that flows through everything, I was able to perform at levels that didn't even make sense to me. And so I'll wrap it up. We can get more into whatever aspect we want to go with this, but I was able to prove on a physical dimension that all of this woo-woo stuff that we talk about, in rooms with our friends, like I was able to prove in professional physical competitions where there are thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars that I won without training. that it's possible to win things doing no exercise, win exercise competitions doing no exercise. And so I closed my gyms because I no longer really, I like studied enough exercise that I was studying underneath it. I was like, wow, there's more important stuff about the human health than diet and exercise. There's more important stuff. And then I realized that, like, well, all diet, all food is made up of light, earth, air, water, consciousness. That is what makes up the consciousness that we consume. What if there's practices that we can dive deep and tap into the energy of these elements without consuming them? And so I closed my gyms, and I really just got really deep into that. And I was studying and researching, and kind of like still in that phase. And I went into like literally like homeless status at that, where I was just roaming around the earth and manifesting day by day where I would end up. And now I kind of came out of that in the last couple of years, and I'm producing, and I've got a team of people in a network marketing organization where we utilize the business aspect, and I basically teach people to create financial wealth with the tactics and techniques that, you know, that are seemingly woo woo, but we've got a business structure where we can create financial success the same way that I was able to create physical success. And we can really test and practice our techniques and have feedback from a business structure.
I just love, I just love that. All of that. It's just amazing. And it's so powerful. I want to go on so many side roads from all that you said right there, because there's so much. But fundamentally is you have this experience with energy that very few people in the world will ever meet somebody like Ra that has this access to these energies. There's so much we're learning now about energy. And at some level, we have to realize there's going to be a point where we will be able to take the quantum material in the air around us, and that will be all we need to eat. Like, you know, there's like once we understand the different kinds of energy. So I wanted to ask you, do you sense differentiation in energy? Have you learned how to filter and understand that, you know, the energy from the earth is always going to be a little more different than the energy we're getting from the sun? A lot of times I feel like an alchemy is occurring when I'm really tuning into the different energies, that some of these are starting to meld together, and there's different energies like the wind and with different certain foods you eat and certain activities. So give me a little bit more about what you might have learned about the differentiation of energy. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do. I do. So typically the way that we speak about these things, everyone wants to know the science, right? And if we could learn to and I'm sure that your audience is open-minded, but I just want to give a little preemptive experience. If we could just learn to understand that reducing everything into facts and figures and studies is really a limited viewpoint and a limited perspective. If you think about crossing the road and you look to the right, and there's a big huge semi truck traveling your way, in a matter of like milliseconds, you have a feeling. You don't even need to think about it. You just know. There's a gnosis whether you have time to cross the road or not, and your life depends on that. And you can do that quicker than probably a supercomputer that, you know, where you have to plug in the weight of the truck and the friction of the tires if it stopped, and like all the facts and figures about the situation doesn't matter. There's something that's beyond that we can touch, and we access that every single day, just like in that example. And so you're asking about like what's beyond what we're taught, right? Like what's that's really beyond, like what's and can you touch it? Can you feel it? Can you build a sensation of it that's tangible? Because that's what we want. That's what kind of we determine is real or not, is like if we can feel it. Usually it's like, well, I'll believe it when I see it, right? But not everything's happening visually. Like you if we just look into other species, they don't see the same things that we do. So we really have to learn to open up our perspectives in sensations. And we've got more senses than just, the eyes, the ears, the nose, the mouth. This is just what is utilized the most in the structure of society that we've built around ourselves. We used our hands to formulate tools. Like if we didn't have this opposable thumb, for instance, this allowed us, from an evolutionary standpoint, which I'm not saying is the way that we got here, but from an evolutionary standpoint, this opposable thumb allowed us to invent tools. Those tools are kind of how we manipulate reality. And so we just want to see the tools and the devices measure things. But if we didn't have these opposable thumbs, we might find a different way that we're building buildings and pyramids, and maybe we use sound, maybe we use our brain, maybe we use some other force, some other sensation that we don't have. I'm getting off track.
No. I love it all. So the next question that I got to ask, tell me where you chose Ra of Earth as your name, and your relationship to the name of Ra and what you know about it.
Okay. I'm going to spend 90 seconds finishing up what you were saying.
Yeah, cool,
I do have a sensation. The earth tastes different to me than the earth tastes different to me. And all you really have to do is ask yourself, you just need an awareness. And like, you just have to be aware that the earth, the energy coming off the earth has an effect on your body. And therefore your body has the capability of feeling it, and asking yourself the feeling of the earth and noticing that is going to allow you to grasp what's beyond what we're taught. And it's this grasp that's similar to learning how to ride a bike, where like you kind of feel the balance in the beginning, or if you guys don't remember what it's like to ride a bike, go try and ride a unicycle, which I've done. Like you kind of feel where the balance point is, but you lose it. And you start to, it's like this inner thing where you start to grasp and hold on to it with your whole body. You can hold on to that balance point. And it's the same thing with these energies. And you can just ask yourself, how does the earth feel? And for me, it's more of a taste.
It's a taste.
It's like, that's how it's like when my feet hit the earth in a certain part of the planet, it tastes differently to me. I don't know why, but it's just that synesthesia. It's like those two senses kind of interact with each other. And the same thing with the sun. And I think that the main thing, I'm gonna wrap it up here. The main thing is we need to be open. We have to be receptive to this possibility. And with light, normally we look at things. We look at a tree. We look at the earth. We look at the sun. That's a very penetrative masculine thing. That's what we do with our eyes. But if we learn to be more of like an open channel, more quote feminine, more like our ears, where we're receiving the earth through our feet, receiving the light, and even pulling it in, and then asking yourself, how does this feel? That's a way that we can get a sensation of the world that's been around us this entire time, but we have put on the back burner in the background and not paid attention to. And I'll just finish up by saying, when we do that, it talks back. Like when we receive it and like that information coming in, you can have communication. Like that communication exists. And you'll only know by doing this.
It's so funny that you said that. I had a meditation this weekend, Earth's becoming an Earth Sun conduit. And that's what I talk about. You can hear, you can talk to the earth. You can talk to the sun. They'll start talking to you. They almost like, it's almost like they're having sex through you. That you're like, does that make sense? It's the weirdest thing. You're like we are. Right. We're just a vessel for the earth and sun to get it on.
To experience itself. I mean, that's what we are.
Exactly. So, but yeah, the next question was just the background on why you choose Ra of Earth.
So I was born Ronald, and I went by Ronnie. So like Ronnie Teasdale is how most of my life I went by. And like I said, the gym thing was kind of a very big chapter that closed in my life. I was always the fittest person in every room that I walked into. And Ronnie didn't really seem like it was suitable for me. So I went with Ronald. I went back to Ronald. My mom used to call my dad Ronald. And so I kind of took that Instagram name, Ra_Nold. And then, but I still introduced myself as Ronald. And then that didn't really feel right, Ronald. And so then I was like, all right, well, I'm a Kundalini yoga teacher as well. So I was like, I'm going to get assigned a spiritual name in, by one of the gurus in this lineage. And so I did, and she assigned me the name Ravi Chandar, and Ravi means essence of the sun, and Chandar means moon. And so I started introducing myself as Ravi. That didn't feel right, and I was already going by the Ra thing online, and I was like, well, Ronald, Ronnie, Ravi, Ra has always been a part of the name. All I'm doing is shortening them all. Right. And so that's where I come with Ra. Of course, I know of the blue avian that we know of as Ra that came down to what we know of as Egypt. And I've read all. Was
it? Was it a blue avian? Was it?
Well,
I mean, I've heard that correlation, but somebody, that the law of one material. Then you also have Ra Ta. Edgar Casey claimed to have been Ra Ta in his previous life, right?
And then we've got, I don't know if you're into David Wilcock and Corey Good.
Oh yeah, so the social memory complex of Venus is also called Ra, and then they take a lot of that stuff in that Corey Good stuff from the law of one, sort of inspired by some of that is a little bit, I don't know what to take of it, but what is your opinion on the Corey Good, David Wilcock stuff? And the Corey Good stuff, some of that was taken from the law of one. The law of one is these channelings from the 80s, where this group trying to telepathically communicate contacts this 3 billion year old race from Venus that has always been trying to help us, that came down to Egypt at that time. And they said, I am Ra. So when you say Ra of Earth, it's just so cool, because a lot of what you've talked about is implied, that sort of thing. So maybe you have some relationship to it on another level, right?
Well, I mean, if you think about Ra, like that's light, right? And Ra in all of these channels is a disembodied being, meaning that it was billions of people from Venus all incorporated into one social memory complex that doesn't have a body, and then it embodies itself into a form and comes down several densities of consciousness so that we can experience it.
Exactly.
And the great thing I love about the Ra material is that it explains the evolution of consciousness in a way that we're basically in the middle. And so we can see beyond where we're going, and we can actually see it makes sense. And these books were written 40 years ago, something like that. But the internet it was just being developed, but it isn't what it is now. And you can actually see how we're potentially evolving into the next stage of consciousness, the next density of consciousness.
Right. So yeah, the question I wanted to ask with what you said is, what do you talk to me about what you envision as that next density of consciousness is? It's a fun thing to talk about. It's something I'm writing a book about. It's fun it's like I'm remembering it almost. There's a portion of me that wants to bring it or misses it. Like, what do you think that next level of consciousness is, if you were to describe it in third density terms?
I really admire that you're a writer too, and you write books. That's something that I'd like to.
I can't wait, man, because I know you'd bring it. All you have to do is just record some of those 30-minute stories that you have on Instagram, put that up as a book the next day, right?
Right. Okay, so the way that Rob, where did that come from? Then the way that Ra describes the levels is that level, like the first density is the elements. It's light, air, earth, water. Eventually those elements combine in a way that they gain awareness, and they gain awareness by a combination of these elements. They turn themselves into plants and animals, and they have awareness. And once the plants and animals get rebirthed, many, many, many times and learn the lessons needed for the next density, third density, then they can get born as a human. And what's necessary for a plant and animal to gain access to third density where we are is self-awareness. And so if you look at lower functioning animals, they just are eating, mating, hunting, protecting, shelter. But higher levels is like the gorilla protects a harem of women and protects a territory, and they fight to defend because they have this awareness of self and self-preservation and luxury that this self can have if they can fight and protect. And there's a different sensation of self. So then these beings, these spirits, can be born into a human existence, and then there's tens of thousands of years of human existences. And what's next after the human existence is another human existence, but it's a fourth density, which is correlated with the chakras too. This is all in octaves, so there's really like 7 densities, and then the 8th one is a recycle back in a new octave. But the 4th density is one where the human beings can feel each other, and they can feel each other, not like, oh, I feel you, bro, but like when somebody's happy, every human on the planet feels that happiness. We can start feeling the individual entities all around the planet and what they're feeling. And if you guys think about, if tomorrow that happened in the human race, almost all of our problems that we deal with now, I'm sure there'll be new problems, but all of our problems that we deal with now would disappear almost immediately. We would go around wanting everybody to be as happy, well-fed, comfortable as possible, because we can feel the pain, we can feel the suffering of others, and we can see that happening with the internet. With the internet, we literally can see what other people are doing, but we also get that sensation of feeling. And our devices that track heart rates and sleep patterns, and once we start plugging those into our social media platforms, we'll get a much, much better feeling sense of how, not just what somebody's doing and eating for lunch, but how they're feeling. And that attunement, like I said, just being aware that the earth is sending information to you, just the awareness of somebody else's feeling is going to allow us to feel more for them, which is sort of a technological advancement or ascension. The density after that is, which I'll end on is where we know everything that everybody knows. So if a scientist discovers something in Brazil, we know about it instantaneously. And that's where cultures like Lemuria or Atlantis, they were in these levels. And so we get really good at being independent entities as like plants and animals and humans in third density. Our independence is necessary. That's why we have all these individual lives. And it's really good for us to be independent. But in order to ascend, we have to be strong individual units that collaborate together. And that's the point of our individual experiences. Yes, we do want to develop autonomy, but then we want to operate like an organism that has all these different parts, learning all the different experiences possible of a humankind on this planet, so that we can incorporate the every feeling state and every experience and every thought imaginable on this plane of existence. And once we're there, then we can evolve to the next state where we don't necessarily need a body anymore. Right? Because we've experienced everything, we've discovered everything, and we don't need this physical dimension anymore. And we go up a plane, we basically become enlightened. And that's one way of explaining the evolution of a soul or a spirit through what we call life.
Right. But have you sensed a difference in the energies coming in when they talk about fourth density is here and the third density is going away? That part of you that senses, that feels, that's not analyzing, but that it's changing, isn't it? There's such a crazy shift that's happening every day. Just a little bit more, just a little bit more. At least that's my sensation of it, right?
I'm completely like living seemingly when I open up Facebook and Instagram, it feels to me that most of us, maybe every single one of us, are all living in a different sort of constructed reality.
These
And
bubbles of reality, everybody,
right.
you're right, yeah.
And so then we're kind of merging together and experiencing what we assume is reality, but we're all kind of in different like I just listed that ladder of ascension. It feels like we're all in our own different levels. They all serve, right? We're all in service, but we're all in different spots. And it seems, and this is what's talked about in many religions, right? There's a split eventually. There's a split, and half people stay back and some of the people go forward. And that awareness, like you said, I have a sensation of that. Like that seems to be that, like, peeling away. I can feel that tremendously, because there's people that are in absolute heaven right now, and then there's people that are seemingly in like what we would categorize as hell.
Absolutely. There is a new earth forming. You can almost see it. If you look way off in the distance, I think I can start to see it. Like there's like two cells splitting apart, right? My spiritual eye sees a separation slowly happening where there's energetically just two different places, you know, of fear and anger and love and service. They're just these two different places, right?
There's even reports and videos of people seeing another earth forming, like
Right.
above the ground. It's like, this is real stuff. There's video evidence and there's stories and ancient texts about this happening. And so, like
Right.
you said, like for me, it looks like I'm seeing through reality into something else. But again, it's me like trying to balance on the unicycle. I don't have a complete grasp of it, but it's definitely a developing sensation.
Right. Now, there's a couple things. One of the things that you introduced to the world would be perineum sunning. We'll just call it that, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I think probably like the second day after you put that out, I was like, okay, you know, going out to the backyard. And next thing you know, I'm doing it. I've even recommended it for my kids, but you know, but that just right. And I've done it several times, not a lot, like you said, short period of time. I've had a Kundalini experience, I think, from it. I think that and you know, it's like just a plugging in of energy. So, uh, where did you get that idea, and how is it sort of evolved since you started, since you had that first video?
So the perineum is actually a very important gate in Taoism,
Mm-hmm.
and so there's an energy channel there in Taoism, in Chinese philosophy, and yogic. Like that channel is going straight up to your higher consciousness centers. And so just to say that nothing's happening down there, also for everyone, in case you forgot, the way that we create life, like that's all happening down there as
Mm-hmm.
well. The elimination of the consciousness that we take into our mouth, that's all happening now. It's a very important part of the body. We just don't normally like to look there. It's kind of like shadowed. So I, like I said, after the gym, what is making me stronger? I found out that the light is definitely a source of power. And when, like, that's fine, but how do we access that power? What I
Mm-hmm.
found is that the melanin in our hair, in our eyes, in our skin is grabbing on the sunlight and translating it through our nervous system into our higher centers, our pineal gland,
Mm-hmm.
essentially. And our pineal gland, when we sleep, then recalibrates all the cells. It reharmonizes all the cells with melatonin. So melanin grabs the light, transfers it into the pineal gland. Pineal gland produces melatonin, which its job is to go through your body and reharmonize, restructure everything back to what? The harmony of the light, the frequency of the pure light.
Mm-hmm.
That's how the human being operates. Of course, if you're never going outside, you don't get that benefit. You just have the fast food light that you have inside that is inharmonious, probably missing frequency. And so the melatonin produced by your pineal gland at night is going to be insufficient. We all have power to readjust it, but I'm just saying in general.
Mhm.
So when I look at the body, so the melatonin produced by the pineal gland is going through the body, recalibrating it to the light. If you're indoors all day long, the light that you're consuming is producing melatonin that is insufficient. It doesn't have the up-to-date codes from the galaxy, because the sun isn't just a burning ball of gas consuming fuel like we're taught in the gravitational model of the universe. It's more like an electric node that's transmitting information throughout the entire galaxy instantaneously, and that's more like a map that's coming in to our physical dimension and mapping out the shape of the human being, the shape of the tree, the shape of the earth.
True, it is. It's the logos. It's the way you explain it. It's all of the suns are communicating with each other instantaneously. You can feel that, right? Yeah. It's
And
like an
there's
intergalactic Akashic record that we're accessing.
Yeah. I mean, this is some crazy science when you get into it as well. It's not that scientific theory is wrong. It's just the bastardization of it, of the human being, where we just only say that these scientists are right and those scientists are wrong. And then like what we think of as science is just the science that's accepted by the scientific community. But the science on light is crazy stuff. It's awesome. So when we think about like, how do we get this light? Like, where does it come from? How does the light get into our body? How can I just say melanin is bringing light into the nervous system? It's because the skin, the hair, and the eyes are literally the nervous system. We think of like our body as separate, but when the sperm enters the egg in your mother's womb, you were a zygote. That's what that first cell is. And then that cell separates into two cells, and then it separates into many cells. And you're just a clump of cells. Eventually, those cells need to turn into bones and muscle and organs and brain and skin and hair. And the way that your body does that is it separates all these cells into 3 layers of cells. You guys might have heard or remembered from biology class, the ectoderm, the endoderm, and the mesoderm, right? So the mesoderm is the layer of cells that ends up being your bones and muscle. The endoderm is the organs, and the ectoderm is the nervous system and the brain. So if we have, and I'm just going to do are we on YouTube with this? Is this video actually being
It's
seen
not
by
live.
people?
No, it'll come out in like a week or so.
But like, if I do a little demonstration, does people see it?
Yeah.
So I've got 3 pieces of paper, and basically, if we were to imagine these 3 germ layers, what they're called. So if we've got so this layer of cells becomes all of your bones and muscles. And then all those cells that end up turning in, that's your mesoderm. Your endoderm, all of these cells become your entire organ system. And this is the ectoderm. This becomes your brain and nerves. And these 3 layers go like this, and they eventually end up being a human being. And because it's a flat layer, it needs to eventually turn itself into a ball. Oh, I'm doing it wrong. Ectoderm goes in the inside because that's where the brain and the nerves are. It's in the very inside. So as it turns itself into a ball, it pinches the ectoderm, which is the brain, which is in the very middle, right? And then it's the organs and the muscle tissue. And there's 2 flaps that come off the end of that pinch. And those 2 flaps of the brain end up wrapping itself around the sphere of cells. And so if you guys notice, we got the brain on the inside, followed by the organs, followed by the muscle and bones. But what wraps it all is more brain. That's your skin and your hair. And your eyes are obviously inside your brain too. So the skin is the nervous system. Okay. The hair is the nervous system. It's a functioning part of the body. We shouldn't just be cutting our hair off. So it's a functioning part of the body. Its job is to receive light and transfer the information into the body and let it know how to operate. And so where do we have hair on our body? We've got a lot of hair where the sun doesn't shine, you guys. Like a lot. All right. So our hair is made to intake information and transmit information. So if we're getting light down there, there's a lot of light going into the root level of our energetic being. And that's what I mean by this is giving you more energy, because that it's not like it's this subtle energy that's going to make your aura glow. It's going to make you be able to connect to the world and to other people at different levels. And so you mentioned Kundalini rising. Yeah, it's because there's a surge of pure light source going in to your channel and shooting through. You probably have a very clear vessel if you're experienced in these practices. It's shooting through your entire meridian system up into your higher centers. And there's basically an explosion of light that you're experiencing. And this is all the origin. This is all how perineum sunning makes sense. But of course, the video literally, I didn't think about at all. Someone was like, hey, it'd be funny if we made a video. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And because it's in alignment, I do this. I used to, after I closed my gyms, I was outside naked every day, because that's how I started understanding. I was like, this is more important than exercise. I'm going to close my gym and be naked outside every single day. I'm going to be on the earth every single day. Perineum Sunnium gets popular. That's good. It spreads the message, right? Even if it's a silly 1 minute thing, it allows people to open their mind and be exposed to some of these deeper practices. But it's a real thing, guys.
It's a real thing
down there. I just wanted something else interesting, guys. When we have sex, that interaction of nerve hairs, right? Think about the hairs like wires, right? Like an electrical wire system. When you're having sex, like let's just say with a random, like you're connecting root to root, right? That's just where it is. But as you actually start to harmonize with each other and grow into a relationship, sex starts to mean something different. It's because this energy that we're talking about ends up being shared through the root, right? Like through those, the first and second chakra, and that energy is flowing up into the heart. You're receiving each other's energy, and there's an arc happening, and it's going heart through the root to heart. And eventually, if you guys have been lucky enough to have the experience where you feel like cosmic orgasm, or you feel like you're shooting out into space through sex, that's because this energy flow is arcing all the way up into your crown and your pineal and beyond, into the multiverse, into the universe, through a union of light. Like we are all light beings, and we can arrive to that unity with the universe through heightened experiences like sex.
You know, it's so fascinating because I interviewed Jim McCarty, the scribe for the raw material. When I asked him how Venus went to fourth density, he basically said that's what happened. It was on a large scale. It was a sexual thing that happened. They agreed that it was easier one-on-one, not group, was something that he said was in there. But that was the main thing that fired up the social memory complex, right?
Oh, I need to listen to that.
There's a place between those two, right? That, okay, where does this come? It's an energetic combination of some kind that's happening.
There's one, I think it's only one sentence in the entire book series where they mention that. Right. It's like, we ascended very quick because we were a sexual species. Right. Something like that.
So you get this flash in your mind, which you get an idea of a civilization that actually went to a higher level of consciousness, because as a group, they were this highly sexualized species that were using it as a spiritual thing. They were connecting to intelligent infinity through the orgasm, right?
And that's, I just want to mention really quick, I mean, Egyptian sex magic, and there's even teaching, if you guys have read the book, what's the one about Jesus's wife, the Magdalene manuscript, I think is what it's called. The Magdalene manuscripts. She talks about how she was trained in sex magic of Isis, and that her and Jesus would unite in sexual union and charge his ka body through orgasm. And she explains, it's a channeled book of Mary Magdalene. She explains how men are electric and women are magnetic, and this electromagnetism is the energy that we're talking about, and through sex you can amplify that. And then Jesus just went through the death initiation. It was just an initiation, the whole practice of the cross, but he was ready for that. But I did want to say that, like, in all these spiritual gurus, when I noticed that like they all kind of end up being lambasted in the media for like sexual abuse, I know people that, I know people really close to some of these people, and I feel like it's maybe there's some legitimate abuse happening, but I also want to be open to, there is some sex magic being utilized that is just misinterpreted by the media because they don't want to be saying like these people are having orgasms to reach enlightened experiences, but that has to be part of it.
Well, you go back and shamans, the Nagual sperm was a treatment. You know what I mean? And you read about Carlos Castaneda in Amy Wallace's book, and he treated, people would come to him just to have his sperm because it would change their energetic grid, or it was powerful, right?
I think the Nagual, is that the tribe that felt that a human baby was grown by sperm? So I mean, there's one tribe.
Yaqui Indian tribe, at least, is the one I'm referring to, but it could be more Toltec. There's several different versions. It could be, right?
Yeah. So a lot of cultures have different views on sex than we do. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And we feel that it's a sacred thing, which it is, but sacred doesn't need to be hidden. You know, like a lot of cultures, if you get married, like all of your friends have sex with your wife. Like that's just what happens, because sex is a gift. It's like, it's a way of congratulating somebody else. I shouldn't say a lot of cultures, but ancient cultures.
Well, I know that there was, in some Hawaiian cultures, the king would leave the wife with somebody that was traveling through, just as, you know, like a gift, right? And she would be fine with it. At least I've read that in some cultures, but it is an expression. It's the creative energy. It's the creative energy behind where we come from. So there's something creative to it. And even unsexual sex does give us a sort of way of understanding how we create. It's energetically based. In short, we can create the universe in literally one split second. That's what it really is telling us, that we have this power within us to create universes within seconds, right? It's an amazing
Big
thing.
Bang. Yeah, that's the Big Bang. And that's what
Big
happens.
Bang is sexual in nature, in the way we can understand it, right?
I mean, that's exactly what's happened. In an instant, you are creating a life. You're creating another universe, another dimension, and it's basically you again. Like this notion that kids are just, you know, a kid. It's just like my kid, but that's like actually you in a way. Like all of those cells came from you and the other mate, and there's a connection. Even if we're not sensing it, again, we got more senses. We can actually be super in tune to our offspring, and especially when we operate in this fashion that linear time doesn't exist, then we can realize that our kids' health, our grandparents' health, 5 generations ago's health is all actually impacting the health of ourselves, and even the thoughts and the emotions that we're feeling. And we are impacting, and our bodies are energetically and energetically communicating with all of the generations that come, quote, before and after us instantaneously. And so we can, with our actions now, I don't want to say change isn't the right word, but I'm going to use it. We can change the outcomes of generations before and after us, because there really isn't a thing as before and after from the perspective of linear, like not having linear time, which is the perspective of someone like Ra.
Right.
They don't perceive linear time.
I just wonder about. Let me go. We'll come back to that because I lost my track of thought there. But earthing, your most recent Instagram video shows you being buried almost halfway, almost up to your neck, and you were there for a little while. You talk about earthing in a lot of your videos, and you've mentioned it here. You do it every day. Tell me a little bit more about it. If I want to change my energy through earthing, give me a kind of a quick summary of how I can go about doing that.
So in ancient Chinese medicine there and Eastern sciences, they track these things called meridians or nadis that go through the body. And they're not nerves, they're not veins, but they're invisible channels. And some people say it's the spaces in the fascia. There's invisible channels, and a lot of them meet in the hands and the feet and the mouth and the navel center. That's where like basically all of them start and originate in these places. So our hands have the connections to all of our organs and all of our thoughts, and so do our feet, and so does our navel center, which is why there's a lot of breath work in Eastern practices and mudras, right, where they're making their hands into different shapes, because these are like the switches that are switching on certain patterns in our body. And our feet also naturally would be touching the earth. And so that from a subtle energetic standpoint is important, because the earth is charging us. The earth is being struck by lightning many, many times a second. And there's ions coming up from the ground into our body. And the way that our bodies work is that our bodies are producing free radicals. And there's basically, when our bodies break down diseased tissues and damaged tissues, there's a production of free radicals, and those free radicals get neutralized by these ions that we take in from the earth. And so our fascia and our entire body is made up of a collagen matrix that takes this electricity from the earth and goes and grounds and recalibrates everything. So from a health standpoint, grounding is it just makes sense. You guys can watch the Earthing movie or read the Earthing book if you want more information. They explain it much better than I can right now in 1 minute. But from a health standpoint, I'll get into the more interesting stuff in a second. From a health standpoint, grounding will change your being. It will make your body digest things more properly. It'll reduce inflammation. It'll make you stronger, able to think, and just make you feel overall better, because that's how we should naturally be living as a human on this earth. The soles of our shoes break down that transfer of energy. But back to like the information in the earth, right? So if we're aware that the earth is not just a rock flying through space, or just flat earth, whatever theory you have about what this planet is, if we understand the earth as a child of the sun, right? Like the sun like birthed the earth, and the earth is a living entity, like the Gaian system. It's holistic, and we're an aspect of it. And things like the rivers are more like the arteries of the earth, and the heavy metals in the earth are kind of like the neurological system of the earth. And the information of the earth is going to be transmitted into our body by earthing. The real question is, how does that happen? And the way that I find is the best is to fall in love with the earth. If we want to communicate with other dimensions or other entities, or even the planet itself, or even the light or the stars, or extraterrestrials, there needs to be a love. There needs to be a willingness to have a harmony within it, right? If you guys have ever been in a loving relationship or even just had a group of friends, you guys might know when they are about to call you. You might know the answer that they're about to say. You might be able to finish their sentences. It's because there's some telecommunication happening. Your guys' energetic fields are merged so much together because you're in so much alignment. So if you're looking at the earth as just a dead chunk of dirt, then you're not in line with the earth. There's very little information that's going to come into your system if that's your harmony with it. So if we can fall in love, and I'm using that term just because it's the best way to describe harmony with it, then we're able to, again, receive the information and taste and have a sensation of this information coming into the body. And for me, I earth like I eat. Like it's something that I do. It's a necessity. It's not to be negotiated. Like I put my feet on the ground. I try and even get my skin on the ground. Again, guys, remember the skin is part of the nervous system. There's electricity being, what does the nervous system work with? It works with electricity. What is light? Light is electricity. The earth is electricity. That's all coming in and feeding your body the information that it needs on this physical dimension. And then we can utilize it to win CrossFit competitions or climb corporate ladders or invent new devices that we're going to need 10 years from now, or know the best things to say in the presentations that we're about to do. We're able to, whatever we're intending on doing great in this life, we're able to do it greater if we're connected to the galaxy, to the universe. If you really want to do things great, we have to like basically stop limiting ourselves and reconnect to these elements that have been there the whole time.
I think what the earth and sun are doing is certain people are just connecting to the earth and sun, and they're creating these little bubble realities. And there's just projectors around the world that are slowly creating the new earth. It's certain people are creating that connection. And it doesn't matter if the world's ending. Those people I know that are like that, it's all around them. Everything is just perfect, right? It couldn't get better. It's like the earth is creating this little bubble around these people that have sort of connected to the earth and sun in this way. And I just see it as like it's a phenomenon I'm noticing more and more, right? Does that make sense? You probably can relate. You have a bubble around you where it seems like everywhere you go, everything is working out perfectly, right?
That's exactly how it is for me, and it's been like that forever. Like the heaven scenario is what I live every moment of every day. It's interesting to me when people are struggling and in desperation and fear mode. To me, it just looks like a choice. Like absolutely, like it just feels like they're choosing to struggle. Because I used to, when I first started noticing this difference, I used to think that people shouldn't struggle and people shouldn't be fearful and people, right? Like I had this like duality thing, but then I was like, well, if everything's perfect for me, then what I'm perceiving is also perfect. And so I started opening my lenses to that. And I started noticing that like, it's clear as day that people are choosing to feel distraught and choosing to feel the way that they want to. And for whatever reason, that's serving them, even if they're unconscious of it.
It's so true. They're of free will. They're choosing that. So I wanted to ask another phenomenon. I know you have Kriyas of the day on your website, Rob.
Kriya of the week.
Kriya of the week. All right. And so in certain Kriyas, people release emotions. I've been with Sadhguru, or you've seen other people, and they just start crying, or you have these emotional releases that are so out of the blue that happen with certain Kriyas. You understand this phenomenon. What do you think's happening? Tell me a bit. Have you ever witnessed this or experienced it yourself?
Yeah, Kriya. So if you guys are familiar with acupuncture, they're actually poking into a meridian and they're stimulating it. They're like turning on a switch. And then that meridian is attached to organ, an emotion, a system of thought. There's also something called Paeta, which is a slapping technique where you can slap different parts of the body. It's very painful, but I recommend that everyone try it, especially, I don't know about childbirth, but I know that for most men, it'll probably be one of the most painful things you've ever experienced. And that's a good experience to go through. But that's activating certain meridians that are tied to emotions, and it's clearing trauma, it's clearing pollution that's in your body, and that trauma gets stored in our tissues. There's a saying in yoga, it's the issues are in the tissues. And when we start thinking of our body as electrical vessels and not just a biological, like a meat suit, a machine, right? Like if we kind of just think of ourself as like this brain and this consciousness, and then the rest of us is just kind of dangling off of us, and the job of our hands and our feet is just kind of like move our consciousness around the earth so we can have an experience. If we can get out of that thinking and start realizing that we don't just see with our eyes, we see with our entire body. We don't just experience in our head. The whole body is having that experience. We can start realizing that the experiences that we're having are being stored in our body, not just in our brain. It's being stored in our tissues. And that posture that we assume starts to allow us to strengthen those programs. So if we have a lot of experiences where we want to protect ourselves, we start to actually like move our shoulders forward, dip our chin down, because we're protecting all that trauma. We want to block our heart, and that position is very closed off. And when we do things like Kriyas are like the slapping, like the acupuncture, where you're repeating movements or you're holding a posture, but you're moving your arms in a certain way. And what's happening is those tissues are opening up and the electricity is flowing through it. And what's being released are the programs that you might have brought in when you were 3 years old and your dad slapped you because he didn't like that you took a candle and melted it and invented something, right? So that fear of creation, I literally just made that up. That fear of creation because of this one event is stuck in your body. As a girl, you because I study psychology, you come up with defense mechanisms to handle that. You don't have the mechanism, the psychology as a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old or even an 18-year-old to process that. So the body is just held in a certain way to protect you from even really having to think about it. And then if you do a Kriya and you open that channel up, that experience comes flowing through you. And sometimes you remember, like you get the sensation of it, you get the visual, the memory, and sometimes you don't. Sometimes you're just crying or laughing or feeling or angry. But that's what's happening, is that programs being exposed so that you can then choose which programs you go forward with.
Right. A lot of what you've probably gone through is going back through your past and releasing things that had happened, right? That's
There's
giving
so
you
much
energy, right? That
so
gives you more
much.
energy. Because we have energy out there just in shards of our soul all through the timelines, just sitting there. And we could just take it back. It's like a huge amount of energy that we can use in our everyday life, right?
There's so much energy that's pulling on us, guys. Like there's so much. There's those experiences where we said something that we wish we wouldn't have said. There's the time where like somebody picked on us. There's all of these things. There's the job interview that went horribly wrong. There's all and there's even really good experiences that you're like, well, why can't everything be like this time in my life? And we've got all these attachments to all of these things, and it's pulling on us in a way that we're unable to receive, like we're talking about, like the present codes,
Right.
because the sun, like the way our calendar works is the earth is revolving around the sun. And so that's kind of, we just track days and months and years, but the sun's also rotating around the galaxy. And just like we've got seasons as the sun the earth rotates around the sun, and I'm just speaking from, a planetary aspect. This whole thing might be a matrix. It might be a dream. It might be who knows. But just from the regular aspect of things, the sun is rotating around the galaxy. There's seasons of the galaxy, and it seems like we're pushing into another season in the galaxy. There's images of the sun's heliosphere, which is the atmosphere of the sun, being squished. It looks like it's being squished, like it's pushing into another cloud. And what that is it's a change of energy. And so the more that we're attached to the experiences of their life, the less that we're able to receive this new information, the new day. And every day is so different. That's why the spiritual masters get up in the morning and they meditate at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m., because what they're doing is there's an infrared spectrum of light that wraps around the earth about 10% further than the visual spectrum of light. And it's infrared. And infrared, if you guys remember, our remote controls used to all be infrared, right? Is this infrared, and infrared is heat also. But this infrared carries a lot of information. And if you're up meditating, 10% more is 2.5 hours, right? 10% of 24 hours is about 2.5, 3 hours. If you're up meditating before sunrise, you're getting bathed in the first light, the infrared light, not visible light, but it's all the information of the day to come. And that's what they're doing. They're accessing the current codes of the current day. And there is no space to be thinking about last week.
Exactly.
There's no space to be thinking about when you're a child. Yes, that stuff's a part of you, but you don't need that experience so much today. It's just more like a memory.
It makes me think about, and there was a passage in a Carlos Castaneda book where Don Juan, this shaman, is saying the old sorcerers in Atlantis were able to see energetically that when you die, there's this dark sea of awareness. It pulls your energy as you die, but it's only your memories. It's all those little memories and all those things that you die with that you didn't like bring back to yourself, and it just feeds on it, right? But all the stuff that you hold on to yourself, so you have a certain amount of energy that you can start at that next level, right? And it makes sense with what you're saying. Like there's this all this energy that we're losing, and it's just there for us to take back.
There's also I've come up across, and I think it's in the book series, the Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East. They talk about, I forget what they call them, but like what's the Sasquatch, the Bigfoot,
right?
Like the Sasquatch or Bigfoot type characters. It also comes up in Corey Goode and David Wilcock's series of Cosmic Disclosure, and in another book. But what I've gathered from 3 different sources that these beings are reincarnated from a higher density, and basically from Mars that blew up, or the Mars was anyway, I don't want to get too deep into it,
which blew up. I think it is.
Yeah.
I know. Right.
Mars was the moon of that super planet. But these beings that have been seen and written about on this planet, they, from the stories that I've gathered, the witness accounts, that they have very little memory. Like they have no need really for memory, because they're so present. And I actually am experiencing this, and I don't know if some people in the audience has. For me, it maybe because of the collisions in hockey, my brain might be malfunctioning, but I'm getting to the point where, so I have to read so much. If you look at all those books back there, I have to read so much because I forget what I'm reading. I read stuff and I just literally forget it. And so, but I'm able to talk about all these concepts so fluidly, but I don't really remember so much. My memory is the more I'm becoming detached from the past and even the future, it seems like I'm going into this zone where memory becomes less useful for me.
Right.
And
It's still in the hard drive, but there's like a separate memory drive that's forming where it's not important. Is that kind of like, that's what I'm
yeah, it
experiencing?
seems like it's in me, but I just, the wire going to it isn't strengthened.
Right. There's a memory change happening beyond energy. The shift we're experiencing is a different understanding of memory and where it comes from and what we're remembering. It feels like that. There's something going on with memory in general. My past lives. I'd like to remember my past lives, and but then part of me wouldn't want to remember those things because a lot of that stuff might be irrelevant or pull me into stories and karma that is very difficult to overcome. So memory is definitely something we're going to understand. We have to understand memory, right?
Yeah, and I've also, like, if we start thinking about DNA as an antenna, as opposed to, well, if we start thinking about our entire body as an antenna, and our lifetime consciousness, our thoughts, even our memory, we think of those things as being stored in our body. But if we look at a radio, we wouldn't make the mistake that the people singing the song are inside the radio.
Mm-hmm.
But yet we think that the thoughts and the memories and everything that we are is in here. What if, and again, I don't have answers to most of this stuff, but what if we are open to the possibility, the probability, like in quantum science, like what is there a potential where we're more of an antenna channeling
Mm-hmm.
what we assume is me into ourself? Is there a way to access more of what we, more than me? Is there a way to access like the whole thing?
Right. So when we get full access to the Akashic, we won't need to remember anymore. We can just go, it'll be like the internet is
Right.
for a lot of us now, like Google. I don't remember that movie. Remember those in the old days when you'd have that song and you couldn't remember the song, right? And then nowadays we just look it up on Google. We find it within a couple seconds.
Yeah, you just have to, you don't even need, you just look up like a couple words having to do with the thing that you're thinking of, and then the video you were thinking of, or the blog post, or the information is there. And that's, yeah, like you said, there's something happening that feels like there's a shift happening, which is awesome. And I think that's why a lot of this distraction is so prevalent, is to keep us from contemplating these things.
Right, which was what was scary during for the world, I'm sure, when we all had to sit at home because everything got shut down. People started to really become aware of these things. Now they're back to the distraction, but I think it might be too late. I think enough people sat back and really looked at it that I see a larger, I see more people at play becoming aware of these energies and changes and shifts.
There's so many. I message every single person that follows me, just like to say hi. And so many people are saying like, I just woke up in the last year, and they're using that terminology. So it's awesome that it like everybody just went home and started going online and looking up concepts and astral projection and things that they don't really, they think of as fiction, and they start being more open. And like you said, it does seem like it's too late, because let's just say if there are elites that have a different agenda than that, right? If there's a contradicting agenda, I don't want to label it as good or bad or light or dark, but if there's a contradicting agenda than us ascending, it seems like these powers, these entities are struggling. It seems like they're like really playing all their last cards. Like they're just throwing everything on the table.
Whatever it takes.
So laughable.
Right. It is. It's hilarious because there's going to be a point. There is nothing they can do. The veil will be lifted. The veil will be lifted. Right.
Right.
But before then, you can see the terror and fear in the way they're portraying themselves as to what will happen. Right. But it's been such a huge joy, man. I could talk to you forever. And you're in Laguna Beach, so we got to hang out sometime soon. I'm in Orange, man. So
I want to, man.
Yeah, for sure. And there's so many other questions. I better, I'm sure when I am done, I'm going to remember like 20 things I'd like to ask. But let me just end with this question. I just got done reading the book on karma by Sadhguru, kind of a different way for me to understand karma as an energy and how you express it. And so once we have gotten rid of all of our karma, I mean, then we die, right? He's making the argument that certain super advanced yogis reach a point where they purposely create karma. Maybe it's a food related thing or something, just so they can live another day, because they realize as soon as I'm done with that karma, like it's done. So what is your perspective of karma and its relationship with energy?
So for me, that's a good question. For me, I mostly take the perspective of a creator. We're
Mhm.
creating this reality, and we're tuning. Reality is basically tuned to our vibration, our thoughts. And like I said, like I was winning CrossFit competitions because I was tuned to be the winner. i
Mhm.
was I was broke and no money was coming in my life after the gyms because I was tuned to sitting under waterfalls and connecting with nature and reading books. I didn't need money. And then I started the new business in multi-level marketing, and I'm tuned to producing massive amounts of the green pieces of paper and helping other people do it too. And that's all manifesting in my life. And the thing is that whatever we envision in this physical world is likely going to happen. It is going to happen. And whether we're aware of it or not, that's what's happening. If we're going out there in a competitive way, there's going to be people competing against you, and you almost need them. Like they're a creation. Like you're noticing the people that are hating on you, and you zone into that, and you amplify. It's like they're your muse, right? Like if you're, and you might not even know these people. We might even be talking about the government or the president or a corporation, but like you need them to satisfy your thoughts and your emotions about them. And so for me, everything is a potential on it's a potential possibility on this plane of existence. And just like in the double split experiments where they show up as a particle or a wave, the quanta show, it's light showing up as particle or a wave, that duality, reality is working the exact same way. And karma comes into play. Like I said, if I'm a little kid on a BMX bike, I'm an expert on a bike, and I kick my back tire out and knock over a garbage can, why is it at that moment I fall on my face? Like there should be nothing that suggests that I am sloppy enough of a bike rider that I would fall on my face, but it's the intention of me destroying and being destructive that then the reality just like a supercomputer just rearranges itself instantaneously to the reality where I'm the one destroying myself. And this has repeated itself, so I could write hundreds of times, both positive and negative. But I want you guys to realize that the easiest way to understand this is through your negative experiences. If you think back at any negative experience that you've had in the last week, month, 10 years, whatever it is, you can easily tell how you created it. It's so easy to see when you look back at it and you start thinking, well, I was kind of thinking how I was pissed off at this person and how I hated them. And then something happened where they got the best of you, and you like you can easily see how karma plays out and how you are in this creator mode. So karma for me is just a reflection of your creator powers. We're creating everything based on our intentions with reality. And so if I'm trying to throw a hammer at somebody's head, that hammer is going to come back and hit me in my head. And that's kind of like a simplistic way to describe it.
Man, we have got to see the Raw of Earth book. I got to walk into a Barnes and Noble, man, and see that Raw of the Earth right there. I see you on the book jacket. It's now going to happen. I'm sorry, it's too late. So, but I just want to thank you for taking your time, and I've learned so much. It's so nice to meet you, and thank you for all that you've taught me from before and changing the way I eat, the way I act in the sun, the way I meditate, the way I breathe. You've taught me a lot about breathing, and that's something we could spend hours on, right? But I just want to thank you for that. And so hopefully you'll come back again soon. We'll talk again soon, but thank you so much.
Brian,
yes,
it was such a pleasure to be here.
Oh man, thanks. Welcome to the Reality Revolution.